If that is not an age-appropriate material from, say, a minor, that should not be in a part of the library that the minor is going to have access to.
Man, that is amazingly simple. That's what I don't understand, this big national furor over, they want to ban books and they want to. Well, yeah, if it's inappropriate for a kid, maybe there's some places we shouldn't put that inappropriate stuff. Now, as an adult, you want to go and check out a book, you want to check out 50 Shades of Gray or Black or 50 Shades Darker or whatever it is, that's fine. As an adult, you should be able to do that. Listen, everything I know about women, I learned from romance novels as a kid. I would sneak and read my...
goodness.
Mom, what's a quivering what?
Oh, my goodness. It's interesting because I think we've talked about it in school libraries, and I certainly, I think about the activities of my kids, and, I don't have oversight of them in a school library. They just come home with whatever books are accessible there. I think this new rule is going to apply to, public libraries. So if I was to take my kids to, Daniel Boone or somewhere, or, Missouri River Regional, I think that's where, but presumably I'm with them, right? So I think I would be looking at where they were, checking them out. And I will tell you, kids have gotten really smart. So like you said, you learned from romance novels. My kid the other day, he said, "Hey, Mom, do you know what comes up when I Google your name?" Uh-oh. Because they all have Chromebooks in school. And so, I'm presumably many of these kids have phones. They have access to the internet at home. So if they're not learning about the birds and bees from mom and dad or at the library, they're going to find a way. I mean, I think they'll get on the internet. I agree that we should protect kids from inappropriate... You're Googling my name.
Stephanie Bell.
So, in particular, I think in schools, it's hard for parents to manage what your kid is looking at or comes home with. But in certain circumstances, like a public library, where presumably I'd be with them, it is my responsibility to, not only in a public library, but on the internet, to understand what my kid's doing.
And there's an interesting twist to this. Matter of fact, Christopher Arps, ChristopherArps.com, he's going to be joining us at 6:35 here on the show. We're going to talk more about what Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft have done. He's got kind of this, he's floating this book ban proposal, but there's kind of a twist to it. Pretty interesting. We'll have more with Christopher Arps, who's going to be joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, coming up at 6:35. Welcome into the show. So now that I have Googled Stephanie S. Bell, I'm finding that she is an older woman in the city of Ashland, high-profile attorney with Ellinger and Associates, and co-host here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. All that in 12 seconds. And if I were to Google Brian Hausworth, what would I find on you?
Probably college scoreboard host, news, all sorts of news stories, probably. That would be something similar, exactly.
John Marsh, what would we find on you if we Googled you? 30 years here in mid-Missouri practicing journalism, and I might say he's perfected it, too. Yeah. Producer Hannah is here. What are we going to find on you on the Google?
I'm scared to find out.
Yeah. I've heard you shouldn't Google your name because people sometimes we get curious and we get kind of, me? Because a lot of us spend a lot of our time thinking about ourselves. I've heard, and I don't know what the reasoning is, but apparently, you shouldn't Google yourself, and I don't know why.
One of the things I remember a talent coach involving play-by-play, but I think you could apply it to what we do, is don't look at message boards, because I will tell you that the people that I'm just going to say it, the idiots on these message boards that criticize play-by-play people, there are certain people who do, and then those who don't know how to badmouth people on there. But if you look at the message boards, or even every week they're badmouthing the play-by-play. I mean, just enjoy the game. Don't worry about the play-by-play guy.
Quit critiquing. Back off for a minute.
Enjoy the game. Yeah. Just enjoy. But I mean, it's just, so I think that's kind of one of the reasons why is sometimes, they may not like the way a show is hosted, or they may not like the way news is delivered, or they may not like the way the weather is presented. I mean, they may not like the clothes that the meteorologist is wearing, but there's
we see that at the local TV stations all the time.
Yeah, and it's like, goodness gracious, what matters is the content and what they're saying.
Several years ago when I was in Florida, Sheriff Morgan in Escambia County, Florida, we had our traffic reporter, and she also happened to be a weather gal on the TV station, and she'd come in and she would do our traffic reports. Yeah. And one day we were hanging out with the sheriff, and they got to talking about online comments.
Yeah. And
she was really taken aback at what people were saying about her on Facebook and things like that. And she goes on for 10 minutes and like these comments, and people are talking about what I'm wearing and all this stuff, and she goes on and on and on, and finally she's like, well, what should I do? And the sheriff said, quit reading them.
Mm-hmm.
It was that simple.
That's right.
Quit reading them.
That's exactly right. That could apply to any business. I mean,
right.
And
and by the way, we get a lot of critical comments here at 874-9390. But we read them. Welcome to the show. So we're going to have more on. My name is Branden Rathert. Welcome to the show. Coming up 6:35. Christopher Arps is here. More regarding this idea on banning certain books. I hate when I hear the phrase tossed around. Book ban. It's a book ban. It's a book ban. A ban that would limit certain books as it relates, because there's stuff that we don't want kids to see. Stephanie Bell, and I remember that morning we were in here, and one of the hottest, the book of the day or whatever, that people from the teachers union and teachers in public education institutions were wanting to put were in libraries. And Stephanie and I were looking at the picture. I'm a pretty cool dude, and I'm maybe accepting to a fault. I'm kind of laissez-faire. I'm like, whatever. But I was looking at some of the pictures that were in this book, and
you were blushing.
I was blushing, and then I felt like I was going to get a visit from HR because I showed the pictures to Stephanie. Remember?
And I was blushing.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is inappropriate. This is like putting hands on a 12-year-old and whispering dating advice into her ear. It felt really creepy to even show pictures that are in schools. Blows me away. A couple of big things. City council meetings, some really important stuff happened last night in Columbia, homelessness. But I want to start here because this is something that we don't hear very often. Ron Fitzwater, city councilman, Jefferson City. By the way, a couple of big highlights last night in Jeff City, John. I'll give you a few points.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of interesting. I was talking with somebody at the chamber event Friday in Jefferson City about this, and I'm like, yeah, I've heard about it, and I didn't know it was such a thing. As a matter of fact, and I got to give also points to Ron Fitzwater on the Jefferson City Council, also very likely mayoral candidate. Well, he's declared, yeah.
He just hasn't filed.
Hasn't filed,
Exactly.
So he has the intention to run, but he said this last night regarding this composting issue.
We probably fumbled this one initially, and I think the public weighing in gives us that opportunity to reconsider things. So I appreciate everybody that communicated with us.
I always appreciate when somebody can say, hey, you know what, we messed up. And we've talked about this a lot on our show, especially coming, for example, from the White House administration. The times that Joe and Karine Jean-Pierre and anybody else in the White House, Alejandro Mayorkas, when he lies about a secure border, if these people, there's a lot of benefit taking ownership of when you are wrong or when you make a mistake. Take ownership of those mistakes, and we could see, there's some value in that. And Ron Fitzwater there, in a matter of less than 15 seconds, took ownership of it and thanked folks. And you know what happens after you take ownership of something, especially when it's a mistake or something you didn't do right? Then people move forward. Because if you don't take ownership of your mistake and you make excuses, blame other people, well, it was because of that, people will continue to talk about it. Put it to bed. And then in, the homeless issue in Colombia, this is crazy. As a matter of fact, we have an attorney on this morning. It was kind of an interesting story. Her name is Marjorie Lewis. Now, she reps the property owner where this land has been sold. She formerly owned the property. She sold it to a Columbia City Council person. And now they're selling, and they want to build a home. Several different things as it relates to homelessness going on. But we have this attorney. She represents a property owner who sold it to a city councilwoman and now wants to sell it to an agency that wants to build probably a homeless shelter. And this woman's like, wait a minute. That's not what I wanted it used for. So it's interesting. It's not your property anymore. But were there some kind in the contract where there are certain parameters said, I'll sell it to you, but don't use it for this, and that. She's here at 7:35 this morning. But a couple of big things specifically as it relates to homelessness.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And it's a little complex. The attorney you're referring to is Marjorie Lewis. Marjorie Lewis, of course, has sent a letter, and that's gotten a lot of attention. You also have concerns from the Community Improvement District down on the business loop. But basically, in a nutshell, Brandon, what happened last night is the city council approved purchasing the VFW property near the business loop to provide an initial location for the homeless shelter. They will be spending about $865,000. They'll get the building, they'll get the parking lots. There's a billboard there that actually generates quite a bit of revenue. I think it's a Lamar billboard. They'll get that as well. So that'll generate some money. I don't know who's going to take over that billboard, but that's basically what they're looking at. And then the whole idea is to build this opportunity campus right in that area. Roughly, you're talking about the power plant and then where the VFW post is right now.
It's kind of squished in between Business Loop and I-70. It's
and there are a few homes back there. I went. There's picnic tables and stuff, but it's kind of out in the middle. It's just kind of
hidden. It's hidden.
Really
That's the way I think of it.
It's hidden. You can't even hardly see it from the interstate. It's hard to see from the interstate. But there is opposition to this, and the CID board basically had a pretty powerful comment, Kerry Gardner. But in the end, the city council is going to proceed. We'll see what happens.
And I think that's the thing. We'll see what happens. And listen, there's something to be said for homeless families. I don't think it's inappropriate to focus on that, but the city throwing money at a homeless shelter. And it's like, so you take money from me and Brian Ellsworth and Stephanie and Hannah and Marsh and give it
What am I doing? I am blowing Dodge.
So helping them with families with exceptional needs for their children. So that's one of the things. I met with the soldiers, I met with spouses, and it was such a great visit to see our military. You know, a lot of times only 1% of Americans serve in our military. And we think, oh, we're not at war. We don't have to worry about them or think about them.
All right, Joe Biden last night campaigning, excuse me, on what is that, on CNN? MSNBC? ABC? CBS? NBC? Well, that's getting us into today's Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
Joe Biden on Monday appeared on none other than Chris Arps' favorite, Newsmax.
We'll have to ask Chris about that. He's here 6:35 on what's Joe Biden doing on Newsmax?
Well, apparently she was talking about cancer, and so I think we can all agree. She said it's not a red or a blue issue. Cancer affects every American. Obviously, the Biden family in particular was affected by cancer. And so she did an interview just talking about, that we need to find a cure for cancer.
And it was interesting, and it was pretty much, and it was a fairly lengthy interview, especially for a cable news outlet. And she did say it was pretty much about cancer, which is cool. And then she did say towards the end, Joe and I will never stop fighting for, which it was campaigning to me, but I'm a cranky old dude. What do I know?
But we can agree we need to do something about cancer, and it has affected us all. So I will give her points for that. I won't nominate her for winner of the week. Also, somebody else I'm not going to nominate for winner of the week, President Joe Biden officially, Hannah, kicked off the application for his student loan debt cancellation program yesterday. Apparently, you didn't get the email that the application process actually opened Friday.
I did not.
You didn't get the memo?
Nope.
So the number of people that actually applied over the weekend is a quarter of what they expect to apply. So a lot of people applied over the weekend. I'm wondering, I'm not usually a conspiracy theorist, but, did they look at your social page, Hannah, and did you get knocked down the email list or something? Who did get the email to apply? Because somebody knew that, a quarter of people knew that this application was open, and somehow your name was off the list, Hannah.
I'm Googling it right now.
And so, about a fourth of the applications are in. Apparently, the soft beta launch that happened over the weekend didn't have any glitches. According to the White House.
Called all of his friends in Delaware, Martha's Vineyard. Hey, just so you know, here's a little Pelosi does insider stock trading and stuff, so I'm going to do some inside info regarding this college student loan forgiveness.
Well, and we know how tax returns go, right? You're going to, sometimes it takes a while. So are those folks who got the inside info, are they at the front of the line? I don't know. Maybe I've got my conspiracy theory hat on today. And we talked a couple weeks ago about, are debates still a thing?
Yeah.
But apparently they are, and there's been a lot of them going on lately. And Republicans are doing a shuffle toward the middle in a drastic way. Last night in Utah, Senator Mike Lee was debating Evan McMullin. He was distancing himself from Trump, reminding people he voted less in line with Trump than all but two Republicans. Also in Georgia, Brian Kemp's making statements about abortion, moving toward the middle.
He was pretty soft there in that debate last night when it came to abortion. But Democrats, they're all moving. And what we saw on TV last night from some progressives, pretty interesting. We should do a whole thing on this 7-10, how the right and the left is moving to the center.
Hi, I'm Becky Arps, and I am so excited that you get to experience a bit of the thoughts I hear every single day. Enjoy.
There he is from ChrisArps.com. It's Mr. Christopher Arps.
I wish you'd get it right.
Yeah, what do I? I thought you said Chris Arps or ChristopherArps.com. Either one works.
Well, it's technically originally ChristopherArps.com, but because you keep screwing it up and saying ChrisArps.com, we had to buy that domain.
So, because I can't get it right, you're having to put more money. See, this is cause and effect. That's exactly what we do here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. When something happens, isn't that our specialty, we think, Steph?
You cost me money.
I was just going to say, Chris, you should totally get BrandenRathert.com and point it toward your website.
No, he doesn't want that. He does not want that. And I will have all kind of stuff pointing to that.
Welcome into the show, man. So, Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Branden Rathert, Stephanie Pell, John Marsh, Brian Houseworth, producer Hannah, all hanging out with us here on the show this morning, and we are glad that you are here, too.
I am, too.
Well, we love having you. It's one of my favorite. You know what? Chris Arps, Tuesday morning, 6:35, and then winners and losers of the week, 8:35. We do it every Feel Good Friday. That's between you and winners and losers of the week, man. Top.
Wow, I'm honored. Your favorite segments are winners and losers and Chris Arps. Great.
That winners and losers segment. So it's pretty fun. Let's start here. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, by the way, potential.
Yes, on Saturday.
What were we doing with him Saturday?
I was emceeing the annual St. Louis County Republican Central Committee Lincoln Reagan Day dinner, and he was one of the speakers.
Very nice. I do enjoy hearing. He's got a lot of passion for what he does, and I personally, the political stuff aside, I agree with most of it. Love the socks that he wears, and he's passionate. He's one of those. I believe he is truly passionate about what he is doing, but he's got a plan. Public libraries would have to adopt policies to determine what material is appropriate for certain ages. We hear a lot about book bans and stuff, but one of the things I thought was interesting, and he mentioned this here in a conversation with our news partners at ABC 17.
In this rule, we don't technically ban any books from being in the library. We do ban the use of the funds that we give to libraries for books that just appeal to the prurient interest of children.
So he's saying if you're using taxpayer money, state money, you can't use that money for these books. Is this just a safe bet, or is he really clamping his teeth onto something significant here?
In concept, I like the idea. Of course, we don't want our children being subjected to books telling them how to masturbate properly or telling them about transgender issues and all of that. I do think that school board issues and things like that should be a more local area, and maybe the school board should determine that. I do understand his rationale that if we're giving you money, then we have some say in it. But I prefer that to be more of a local issue myself.
And I think he's saying, you'll have some local control because each area of the state is different. Okay, in St. Louis, y'all do what you do. In Kansas City, y'all do what you do there. Unfortunately, specifically, when we look here in mid-Missouri, city of Columbia gets looped in with the political mindset of Kansas City and St. Louis. And they are the exception rather than the rule right here in mid-Missouri.
Yeah, I'm looking at the rule, and I guess it says, that any library employee shall not knowingly grant access to any minor of any material not approved by the minor's parent or guardian. And I'm just thinking, what if I, as a parent, decide I do want to educate my kid about the birds and the bees, and the library might be a good opportunity to go, and rather than like a book about biology, I would want like a book that does appeal to minors, that talks about sex in a way that would be understandable to a minor, and I want to go check that book out. How do I go about doing? I mean, I could check the book out.
Like with pictures instead of the pictures that we were looking at. Pictures of SpongeBob SquarePants and Bugs Bunny showing you how to properly do this stuff.
Right, and it says that they would have to have my approval, but we've been through before where I had to go get my daughter's ears pierced, and there's a rule that says you have to have parental consent. And in order for them to show the government that you have parental consent, I had to show up with my ID and my daughter's birth certificate to show that my ID matched her birth. So now am I bringing my ID and the birth certificate to the library to check out a book? I don't know. But, I think I do like the idea of, local control. I like the idea of giving more control to parents. And I think, in particular in school libraries, I think, we need to be really careful because parents aren't right there with their kids checking books out. But I think this applies to all public libraries.
I agree with you. And, you guys had me on because I'm the noted political analyst, correct?
Yeah.
That's why you had me on. Besides, you like me, Branden, you claim.
Man crushing. I mean, and Missouri, your knowledge of Missouri politics and your political mind, yeah.
But you know what also, too, I think, and I hate to do this because I'm a political animal, I think you have to look at 2024 governor's race when it comes to this decision to do this. Mike Keyhole, Lieutenant Governor, has made the rounds. He is let everyone know he's running for governor. He's got a lot of endorsements from a lot of the outstate rural groups. Maybe this is a move by the Secretary of State to kind of stir things up for the potential 2024 governor's race. I don't know. In these elections, school boards and parents have been very concerned about what their children are being taught. We've seen a lot of school boards that have changed because of parental activists. So maybe the Secretary of State's trying to get on board that bandwagon for 2024.
All right, Christopher Arps, chrisarps.com. Plus, you see him just like Jill Biden. You see him on Newsmax TV.
Yeah, that shocked me. What is Jill Biden doing on Newsmax?
And it was a pretty lengthy interview. Now, they did spend most of their time talking about breast cancer, which is cool. Chris Arps hanging out with us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think if there was any tie, I think the Secretary of State and the former Attorney General are kind of doing things that have to deal with the times that we're living in. 9/11, 2001, we had 9/11 terrorist attack. We did some unprecedented things to try to keep the country safe. 2020, one of the big issues is parental involvement in schools and what they're teaching our children. And maybe the Secretary has tried to get on top of that issue.
Hey, Chris.
In both cases.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, when was the last time you were at a public library checking out books?
You know what? I can honestly answer this.
Okay.
Probably about 10 years ago, because there was a St. Louis County Library branch that was literally about 2 minutes from my mother's house. I would go up there occasionally. I visit my library.
10 years ago.
I visit my library every decade too, Chris. I was trying to think.
Well, you know what? I'm just thinking about this. It was a little earlier because when I was younger and a member of the Young Republicans, they used to have their monthly meetings at the St. Louis County Library headquarters. So does that count?
Yeah, we'll take that. It was 7 years ago. Okay. Because I was that conscientious objector to Obamacare, dropped health care insurance, was paying fines every year because I was just adamantly against Obamacare. I showed them more than $2,000 later in fines and penalties, but I showed them. But I had to go to the library for tax forms, and I had to because I needed the book. It was hard to find the info online, and that was it would have been about 7 years ago.
Hey, Branden, I think you're the only person in America that paid the Obamacare fine. I didn't.
Well, I did because I had health care insurance, and I said I'm dropping it because I'm not going to be forced. I'm not going to be forced to pay for this. Yeah, and I
didn't have any, and I didn't have health insurance for a time, and I didn't pay any fines.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, not yet. The government's listening. They're spying. They are surveilling. Yeah.
And I will go in defense of the libraries. I do have small kids, so I've been rather recently, and I do think, I love having a Boone County library in Ashland. But I will say, before I had small kids, that period as an adult, I skipped along between the law library and the kiddie section. I skipped a period there for going to the library.
Yeah, I love the library. They're a great resource, especially when you have one very close to your house.
Right.
I wouldn't drive to one. Let me put it that way. I wouldn't get in the car, drive 10 or 15 minutes to the library. No, but if it's walking distance like this one was, yeah, I'd do it.
It's one of those. It's kind of like we think of some vacation spots. It's not really a destination spot. It's a day visit. Like we think about some vacation places. Christopher Arps.
Exactly.
All right, fine. This is, and I want to keep, because I want to talk about this interesting, something Marsh brought up on the show yesterday here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri about a school and radioactive waste found by it.
Oh, that's my school district.
Well, okay, so there's context.
Yeah, but I did not go to Jana. But yeah, that's in the Hazel School District, that school.
So I want to talk about that because it is pretty interesting. It's getting some national play, too.
Yeah.
Chris Arps from Christopher. So the website, ChristopherArps.com. I'm looking at it right now. It's ChristopherArps.com. Or it's ChristopherArps.com. You hang out with us and talk about what's happening in the St. Louis Public School District.
Yeah, and Coldwater Creek. It's had some personal things to me dealing with that, and it's all connected. So let's talk about it.